beautiful. Looking around the room, there must be somebody. Oh yes, Martin. So anyway, let us move on. There are these 4 stages. I've been talking this stuff for the last 20 years, so those people who worked with me before will recognize the 4 stages. The most important aspect of this, apart from the fact that at the beginning you don't know that you're doing wrong because you don't know what you don't know, so therefore how could you know that you're doing wrong, is that even when you realize that you're doing something wrong, there's Mr. Blocker ego who comes in and he says, no, I don't want to lose face, I want to look good, I'm not going to admit that there's anything wrong with me, I'm not going to allow you to go to the next stage. But we know that belief is important to change behavior for our training, coaching, mentoring, and education. So at that point, normally, if you're aware of the processes, we spend a lot of time trying to convince people to change their way of thinking, to get into conscious competence. I know that I'm doing it right. The moment, of course, you know that you're doing it right, you have to start all over again. Yeah? Because life has moved on. And all the things that you've learned, you need to keep in your mind there are new things to learn. That's life. Next, please. I didn't realize it was that boring. Can you click again, because I think I've got it on, and the next one. And the next one. This is the sort of conversation I have with Richard very often.
Really?
And he always wins.
Which one's me? Oh.
Got there before you again.
Never won the game.
Next.
I've more stand up trying.
We do this stand-up act, you know, it's part of the amusement. What we're trying to do, how am I for time, David? Not taking away too much of your time?
No, carry on, sir.
At the moment, we have excellent tools with Kopia, for example, having an analysis of the current state of an organization as is, and we plug in the various tools and fill them in with the criteria and the information from the company with whom we're dealing. Then we get to the stage where we're trying to encourage a quantum jump. We're trying to encourage a change which isn't linear. So we're talking about non-linear development, yeah? And to get people to take that critical leap, they need to believe in order to behave in the way that we need them to behave to change. And this is where all of the psychology comes in. We're putting in particular programs to change the work culture of an organization is so difficult, because changing the attitudes and behaviors of people is very, very difficult. And this is why we want to use innovative ways of doing this. This is why, for example, with team building, Richard uses techniques which in Poland are not generally known, because it breaks down the barriers. We need to break down the barriers to change the belief system that something else actually works, and not the things that we've got in the past in the back of our minds, but things that have to happen in the future which are different. But even if we get somebody to leap, we've then got another problem. How to sustain that improved performance over a period of time. Because there are many consultants that go into a company, they change something by hard processes, virtually doing it by fear, then they go home, and the organization just goes back to exactly the same behavior that it had before. Maybe a little bit better, but it's not sustainable. So all of the stuff that we're going to be talking about with Richard, with David, see how deeply I got in there.
I know this stuff.
With David and Martin, we'll be talking about how do we get from that constant leap to sustaining a desired state, and to do that, the people need to have what's in it for me, a within. Because without the within, the motivation is very difficult. David will be talking more about withins later. One of the things to remember is that change management is a multidisciplinary practice. It requires, amongst others, extremely